On this edition of the program, the Liberals barely squeak by in Canada. We talk about the White House Correspondents Association Substack dinner and whether or not media has permanently changed, and a long conversation about the Pope. A little bit on the big, beautiful bill. It's all coming up.
The following is brought to you by Just Another Pilot.
Hello and welcome everybody to the Politics program for April 29th, 2025. Your old pal Justin Robert Young joining you here in, we're going to be all over the place. I'm going to be telling you a story about Washington, D.C. in Austin, Texas, but by the time that this is published, I'm going to be in San Francisco, California. I'm all over the place, man. I'm dotting the map. Very, very busy week here, but I did want to share this story with you. Kevin Ryan's going to join us. We're going to talk about the Pope, but I made the executive decision to head on up for one night only to Washington, D.C., our nation's capital, and take part in what is affectionately termed Nerd Prom. It is the White House Correspondents Association weekend, a night when Washington, D.C. gets suited and booted. All the ladies in glorious gowns, and they all go out and drink their faces off. So Substack, the platform where we are hosted, the platform where we have our paywall, they threw a big party, and I was lucky enough to get invited to it. But I want to rewind a little bit before we go into my experience there, because I do think that it was something important. The White House Correspondents Association is obviously a group in turmoil. They have bristled when it's come to Republican administrations in the past, but never have they been in such open warfare as they are with this version of the Trump administration. And even though the first Trump admin did not send members of the administration to that gala dinner, which usually is set up because they will have a comedian, usually somebody from either SNL or The Daily Show, that will roast the political world, and then the president gets up and gives a speech. Now, in another world, you would imagine that Donald Trump would love this event. But that has not been the case. And so this year, there was no comedian. There was a historian, and there were awards, speeches by journalists. The most notable of which was Alex Thompson of Axios, who won an award for his coverage of Joe Biden's mental frailty, something that he's got a book coming out for at the end of the month. And he gave the following fairly solemn speech. Let's go ahead and play a clip of that.
One serious note. To my bones, I believe that reporting and the White House Correspondents Association is as necessary as ever. President Biden's decline and its cover-up by the people around him is a reminder that every White House, regardless of party, is capable of deception. But being truth tellers also means telling the truth about ourselves. We, myself included, missed a lot of this story, and some people trust us less because of it. We bear some responsibility for faith in the media being at such lows. I say this because acknowledging errors builds trust, and being defensive about them further erodes it. We should have done better.
The media needs to take responsibility for the lack of trust that the public has in them. Not exactly a knee slapper, right? It is more akin, if Alex Thompson is very much a part of the Washington, D.C. media sphere, it is a person talking to themselves saying, we need to get help. And the first sign that we are serious about it is admitting that we have a problem. So that's what eventually happened that night. But everybody could kind of see it heading there. The idea of the White House Correspondents Association dinner being a fun time was totally out the window. Everybody knew it was going to be dour, and that's the flavor of dour that it ended up. But for me, I got up early, I got on a flight, I got to DC, stayed at my hotel in Dulles for a couple hours, had lunch, and then went on in. First stop, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, because it was the only time that he could make it work. Our pal, Kirk Beto of National Journal Hotline. We met at the Tune-In, my favorite bar on Capitol Hill, dive bar. Always a really, really, really good time. We got to chop it up, talk Steelers football, and a lot of inside gossip. But one of the things that he mentioned to me was that since the White House Correspondents' Dinner was known to be a bummer and a half, the heat for DC was on the party that I was going to, the Substack party. Now, I did not go, because I was not on Substack a year ago, to their White House Correspondents Association dinner party, but people that have done it told me that this was a significantly larger version of it. And so, eventually, I made my way to the line, the hotel that it was taking place in. And I gotta say, this party was packed. Let me give you a little comparison. The only other Substack party that I've gone to in DC was during inauguration, at which point it was held in a private bar area. There was maybe 100 people that showed up, almost all of them Substack writers, people that I really had a fun time networking with. For that party, because I'm a nerd, I wound up showing up early. Like I was like right on the dot as to when people were supposed to arrive. And it allowed me to chit chat with some of the people that were organizing it. It was very heartening to know that they were aware of who I was, which is, just nice. But eventually people all showed up. And again, all Substack writers, all people that are, practitioners of the Substack arts. I got to this party about 15 minutes after it was supposed to start. And when I tell you that twice the amount of people that were at the first party in total were there, I am not kidding. And it only filled up from there. This thing was a-holes to elbows. And I gotta say, the ratio of people that actually write or produce content on Substack to people that don't was greatly skewed. I ran into some of our favorites, Michael Cohen, Tom LoBianco, Gabe Fleischer, Michael Tracy. It was good to see everybody. And it was fun to be able to glad hand. I did a little bit of networking. The other Michael Cohen, the Trump Michael Cohen, he was there. So we got a picture of the two Michael Cohens together. But the party was so big because, in my opinion, we have crossed a media Rubicon. Everybody that was in that White House Correspondents Association dinner was getting lectured by themselves as to why they were declining in relevance. And meanwhile, not only was the energy at the Substack party, so were the hangers-on. DC is a status-obsessed town, and anybody who believes that they can advance their career by being closer to people that have power will be there. Supercharge that with an open bar, and you get the kind of crowd that showed up on Saturday. And so that's why there were just as many real estate agents and lobbyists as there were people that actually populate that site with content. Because there was a great desire to be close to where the power is. And I thought it was an extraordinary sign of the times that it was not at the Hinckley Hilton where the White House Correspondents Association dinner is. No, it was with us, the unwashed internet masses. But I will say, it was a little bittersweet for me because the unregulated internet has been my home for my entire professional career. I mean, I was doing this stuff before I knew there was a career in it. So I do feel a little bit like the guy who moved out to the unsettled Dakota territories, and now my little corner store in Deadwood is going to be surrounded by hotels and casinos that are put up by way of the New York money that has arrived via train. And while they are all corseted and besooted, I'll benefit by them being my neighbors, but it will definitely be a different world. Substack is now the mainstream. That's what Saturday proved to me. I would like to welcome back to the show a man who needs no introduction. The one, the only, the cosmic Kevin Ryan. How you doing, buddy?
Good, man. How are you?
I had to bring you on because you're probably the person who talks about his Catholic faith the most in my life. I probably have a lot of Catholics in my life, but I don't have anybody that will volunteer Catholic theology to me, as he does all theology. But the Catholic stuff you take personal ownership of in the way that Kevin does. And obviously right now we are at a gigantic moment for the church as Pope Francis has shuffled loose this mortal coil. And now we are going to begin the conclave process after his funeral over the weekend and choose a new pope. But I wanted to just kind of get your sense of, you know, the life of Francis, the life of the pope we had. So just right off the top, and I got a couple of ways I want to go with it. What were your thoughts on Pope Francis?
Oh, I loved Francis. Yeah, I thought he was a fantastic pope because he pissed off everybody, like politically speaking. Mm-hmm. He really, and I feel like the description of why he pissed people off has always been inaccurate. It doesn't take into account like his full, I don't know if you want to use the word essence, but I mean, once you realize that like all of his main motivation is like life, he cherished life and love. And once you look at that, the contradictions make sense. It's okay to make contradictions or seeming contradictions, but if you're superimposing your own political beliefs onto that, you know, the head of the Catholic Church, like, of course it's going to be political. But yeah, I'm definitely a papist, and I think it's worth mentioning that like I grew up like pretty hardcore street Baptist.
Okay. What is that? So fill me in here. What is a street Baptist?
Yeah. So it's, I mean, essentially non-denominational, very much like, your body is the temple, the only real like cathedral you need. Go out. It's very apostolic, or like not evangelical in like the denominational sense, but in like the exercise of being like our church was actually a 100-year-old fire station, the upstairs of it, and the ceiling was a little too low and it was like janky. And so that's like that's part of the reason, you know, my conversion to Catholicism took like, you know, 10 years. But that's the Pope And the presence of the Pope is one of the big reasons I converted.
Really? So you converted after Francis became the Pope?
No. Let me see. When did I convert? Officially converted like 5 years ago. So yeah.
Oh, so that was, yeah.
This is my first experience of the death of a Pope.
The death of the Pope as a practicing Catholic. Yes,
exactly. But
what drew you to Catholicism from the other religions? I mean, I have not particularly, except for once in my life where I had a tremendous animus to certain people, and I started researching religions with the most painful hell, because I figured I would just join the religion, because I really didn't like these people. But other than that, I have not had a particular hunger to shop for religions. How did Catholicism come into your life?
Well, first of all, that's a pretty common first step in conversion for some people. Is a reason, an animating reason. My reason was because I wanted to believe in my bones that these people I didn't like were going to not only be sentenced to eternal damnation, but I wanted I wanted assurances. I wanted the real descriptive stuff. I wanted the lake of sulfur and the unending torment of the damned. But I don't know if that was healthy. I mean, it's
I'm sure people have joined religions for worse reasons than that. But Anyway, all right, Catholicism and you go.
Yeah. No, my entry point was actually philosophy and literature. I kept reading, I was, my reading habits, I was reading, especially throughout my 20s. It was I'll do what, I worked at a movie theater for a while because I knew that I could make enough to pay the rent. And I just spent the rest of my time reading.
Yeah.
So, I read just a variety, Marxist philosophy and all sorts of literature. But what I was repeatedly drawn to were these Catholic thinkers, because they were presenting these ideas that were so, I hadn't experienced that where you had these bona fide intellectuals, that's not part of the Baptist denomination. Whereas with Catholicism, you have nearly 2,000 years of them discussing things on an unfathomably deep level. And then it just opened up everything. I realized so much of what we take for granted in the modern world is, came about because of the Catholic faith, even our healthcare systems. And so it's culturally very revolutionary. And then so I was reading a lot of Catholic writers, and then transferred to a Catholic university. And at that point I was
you were in.
I couldn't go back.
What's the process of converting to Catholicism? You got to go to a couple classes or take a test?
Oh, it's so I tell this to any, I've got some atheist friends. I'm don't worry, I'm not going to push Catholicism on you, because one, I respect you, and I respect the differences in our opinions, but it's also just such a long, agonizing process. It's a year. You spend a year really, really hard work learning the catechism, learning the different rituals, going through all the different thinkers. And it's at least 3 or 4 hours a week. And there is no, you aren't able to participate in the Eucharist in communion until, you can't go to confession until you're fully gone through the process.
Gotcha.
And you can only participate in, there's so many, it's so complicated, which, by the way, confession is also a big reason why confession, Mary, and the Pope are what fully won me over.
Mary,
And
the mother of God.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
And
the concept of the mother of God, or just, was there, what fascinated you with Mary, the mother of God?
so a big part of it was just realizing that Protestants, for the most part, the sacramental Protestants, not so much, but have completely neglected this beautiful, perfect part of Christianity. And my point of realizing that first was like praying the rosary. Just at a rough point in my life, started praying that, and it was like everything just opened up. It was incredible what began happening in my life when I started praying the rosary every day. And then I just like felt this intense, unending connection to Mary, and realized like for me, any aspect of Christian or any part of Christianity that doesn't have this connection to me just feels sort of like incomplete.
That's apparently a big thing with the Italian people. When I was in Rome and I was doing a bunch of tours of religious sites and museums or churches and stuff like that, one of the tour guides made a point to talk about, Rome, especially being a city that's, gone through so much and has transferred through. It's always had a religious feel to it. The religion in question, has changed if you pull things out on a long enough timeline. But it was always a polytheistic city until Christianity, which is a monotheistic religion. But the people have never really been able to shake their love for Mary. Mary is the and then the saints kind of became so. In Italian culture, they joke. It's like they really like, yes, it's a monotheistic religion. Yes, there is one God, but also it's a little polytheistic because everybody picks their own. Everybody picks their own favorite thing. But Mary is kind of head and shoulders above all of them. Yes, yeah, that's that's one of the biggest criticisms of Catholicism, and there are a lot of them. Is that yes, we elevate Mary to the level of Christ or God even. But, that there's an important distinction there in that, like, we believe in a very bureaucratic system for paradise. Yeah. So it's very like it's a deeply political structure, and they're not at the same level. She's very close. We consider her the queen of heaven. But she's an intercessor. So she like is relaying the message, and the more connections you have to the most important person, people are just saints in this case, or angels, who are able to relay the messages and requests you have. I mean, the odds are a little higher. That's what the thinking is, at least. Yeah. All right. So let's get back to the Pope. Pope Francis was somebody that obviously was leading the Catholic Church at the point that you made a final decision to convert. Before you converted, what was your thoughts on Francis? Did you have any? Because obviously he was a bit of a different Pope. He was the first Jesuit to take the position. He eventually found himself to have a little bit more of a political thing, when I want to ask you specific questions about that in a second. But as you were from the outside looking in, what were your thoughts on Francis?
Man, that's a good question. Yeah, I didn't, I guess I didn't really have a fleshed out opinion beyond the fact that like, oh yeah, that's probably the most important person in the world. Yeah. Certainly like the person who has to answer for the most, what is it, like 1.2 billion or close to that?
I've seen 1.6 float around now that everybody's writing there's status report stories on the Catholic Church. But what 1.6 billion people that on some level take their orders from the big guy in the big V.
That's a big V. That's a lot of power. But back to your question, I don't know if I really have.
He didn't really register. Where did you grow up again? Did you grow up in Oklahoma?
Oklahoma. And my dad, who you haven't met my dad, you'll love him when you meet him. He grew up in Ireland, moved here when he was 33.
See, this is the thing that I always figured that you were Catholic because he had an Irish dad. I figured that's just how that happened.
Well, this is like an interesting part of the story because he like really hated the Catholic Church my whole life because, you know, growing up poor in Ireland, during a time when the Catholic Church was sort of like, I mean, its muscles were pretty big and it knew it. Whereas like since the most recent scandal in the church, they've like taken it down a little bit. It's a different church.
There was that famous split with there were the Troubles up there in Ireland where it was not a universally popular position to be a Catholic or a Protestant. So it makes sense that your dad might have fallen on an anti-Catholic side. All right. So it makes sense that you were raised in Oklahoma. The reason why I asked you that is because, I was raised in South Florida, but with family that came from the New York area, like the East Coast in general, and specifically the Northeast. I feel like you are just more enmeshed in a Catholic point of view than you even realize. Like I don't know why I would have opinions on all the popes if I just didn't know a bunch of people that would talk about the Pope, right? Or would have an opinion on the Pope. You probably just grew up in a situation where people weren't talking about Cardinal Ratzinger becoming, the Pope or Pope John Paul or anybody before that. Like I have very specific opinions on like all popes. And I'm only realizing now that just might be the byproduct of growing up around people that were from New York.
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, just to give you a glimpse of it, like I mean, this is like very, very, very Christian part of the country, obviously, but I have like close friends and like a couple relatives who think I'm a Satanist because I believe in the Pope. And because I'm Catholic and they're like, those rituals are awful close to like the satanic black mass. I'm like, you got the order wrong. It's the one is imitating the other.
One copied the other. Yeah. And it's not the Pope.
But yeah, so it's I'm very much in the minority here. So most of the time around here, funny enough, I just kind of keep it to myself. And find like connections because it's amazing in Oklahoma. You go anywhere and people are like, I mean, life is very slow here, which I love. And people will just talk about their faith openly. Like everywhere you go, you see shirts, you see crosses everywhere, you see bumper stickers. So it's a very like Christian part of the country. But yeah, I have to kind of like keep quiet about the Catholic part.
Keep it on the DL. Yeah. Because it's not the kind of thing that's going to go over great at the what's your local chain, your grocery chain?
Oh, research
like Kroger.
Or Walmart, but I don't want to say that on a podcast.
Hell yeah! No, there we go, dude. You can live a fine life at a super Walmart. I'm telling you, like it is everything that you need until the tariffs hit. This is your update brought to you by TakePoliticsSeriously.com. I am here in an undisclosed location on the West Coast. This is an episode that's all over the place, but we had to wait until the news broke in the Great White North. And we do have an upset that only a few months ago seemed almost entirely improbable, and that is the Liberal Party of Canada holding on to parliamentary power, although doing so kind of barely. So yes, the Liberals did the impossible. They held on to power, even though they have been in that position for over a decade, even though they had to switch out their prime minister because the last one was so unpopular, and yet, in no small part, thanks to Big Chungus, Donald John Trump, the 45th and 47th president of the United States of America, who has done nothing but not only personally antagonize Justin Trudeau, call Canada the 51st state, and then slap tariffs that threaten to damage an already fragile Canadian economy. Carney ran very successfully to capitalize on all of that. Peter Poilievre, and I know I'm saying his name wrong, Poilievre, whatever, don't remember his name now. He's not going to be the prime minister. He didn't. And at least, scoreboard is scoreboard is scoreboard. That is what's happened. Now, that being said, it does appear that this is going to be a fairly strong showing, considering the Conservatives went into Election Day as a big underdog, at least in some of the betting markets. And so we're going to find out, and it's coming down to a really razor's edge as I am recording this we are just past midnight on the East Coast. Whether or not the Liberals have to form a coalition government with the NDP, we don't know. And to be totally honest with you, I don't really care. So Carney did it. Good on Carney. It seems like he ran a particularly strong race. And, the Conservatives, man, they were just not able to adjust to the Trump of it all. The Trump effect really did it. Really did. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent set July 4th as the new deadline for Republicans to pass their sweeping domestic policy bill covering trade, tax, and deregulation priorities. The push comes as Speaker Mike Johnson eyes Memorial Day for House passage, but major hurdles remain, including deficit reduction measures and tax policy disputes. Senate Majority Leader John Thune warned the debt ceiling could create a hard deadline, although exact default X dates are still uncertain. The Senate ruled out a proposed tax hike on top earners and said further debt limit information should arrive within a week. Republican divisions are not going to be quite as easy to get through. And that's really the big deal here, is that whatever Scott Bessent says, there's going to be a process that has to go on. And we are nowhere close to that being anywhere close to settled. The House leadership is fraying. All right. I know for a fact that there's a lot of anger around Speaker Johnson. I know for a fact that they've done a good job navigating through these very, very thin margins. But the one thing that they've relied on is the White House. I don't know if you've paid attention recently, but some of the polling here isn't so good. You have scared some strong Republican candidates out of the race for the midterms. And that usually comes when they don't believe they're going to win. All eyes are on Georgia as Brian Kemp makes his decision on whether or not he is going to run. Because, by the way, the only other person that seems to be flirting with the idea of a run against Jon Ossoff, Marjorie Taylor Greene. And I would not favor her to win. I don't know whether or not the White House is losing its luster. I don't know whether or not people in the House and people in the Senate look at the White House and say, you are going to help me keep my job. Because if that doesn't happen, these things get really hard to pass. In every one of these very, very, very thin margin votes, you've had the ability for the Republicans to find their true north. And, I've said this on the Sunday shows, which you can get at Take Politics Seriously if you are a paying member. But as each week begins, the Trump White House needs a win. They need a deal with India. They need a deal with Japan. They need momentum, all right? Because we're in a deadlock trade war with China. The stock market is dicey. You've got banks out here saying that a recession is likely. These are the kind of things that kill a presidency. And a wounded, if not already dead presidency, well, friends, that's not exactly the kind of people that are able to persuade shaky House and Senate members to vote for something that they might not otherwise be excited to vote for. Take Politics Seriously is where you need to go if you want to support this program. You get 2 bonus episodes each and every week to your inbox, no matter where I am. Undisclosed location of the West Coast. Doesn't matter. I got my eyes on Canada. I'm telling you about the Canucks. TakePoliticsSeriously.com. Let's get back to Kevin. Here's what I really want to talk to you about. Because right up till recently, and I guess we're going to be breaking a little news here to our audience because you are no longer with the Blaze, but you have spent a significant portion of your adult life working within the confines of conservative media. And conservative media has been at the forefront of another aspect of this Pope, which is the fact that he was very politically opinionated. So beyond what some might assume, or previous popes had done, for which their remit kind of was faith. Here is what the tenets of faith are, and you should live this kind of life, and this is what the Bible teaches us. This is what our culture is. Pope Francis was not afraid to get into his hot take bag and start talking about specific things that are specifically happening right now. So beyond allegorical, beyond that, he was unafraid to get his face into that buzzsaw. It did not endear him with a lot of Catholics for whom are politically conservative. I don't know quite what the religious makeup of conservative media would be, but I would certainly assume that at least at the Blaze, you are talking to a lot of people of faith who either don't like Catholics or were Catholics that didn't like the Pope. Just put yourself in there. You're a fan of the Pope, and now and you see, how do you understand that argument? How do you understand the critical argument?
Yeah, so I definitely had coworkers who were kind of hostile, but it wasn't like it didn't go too far. But towards the end there, when I was working at the Blaze, there were a ton of Catholics. My editor was Catholic. The editor-in-chief was Catholic. So there was a change that happened. And I think a lot of that is like a move towards a more literary form of writing. Thanks for mentioning the job situation is interesting. Well, there's so much more that's like right on the horizon. So I'm glad you brought it up.
Yeah, we just a little news for everybody.
I love
Kevin has consciously decoupled from the Blaze. There's a lot of really fun stuff here on the horizon. We'll get to that, but yeah. Sure. Pope hater comments. How do you understand? Well, I'll put it this way. What's the fairest criticism that you can understand from a Catholic perspective criticizing the Pope?
Okay. So here's how I'd answer that. It's not a complete answer, but I would say that most people are overlooking a couple really important things in order to like make that very hasty judgment about Francis, which is like, the guy's from Argentina. Yeah. If you've ever had friends from male friends from Argentina, you know that there's it's a fusion of Italian and South American that creates this, they're a unique, the men from Argentina are unique. And there is this sort of bravado that they have. That I've always loved, I've always admired, but and you see this in literature from Argentina as well, where it's just like shoot first and ask questions later. Yeah. And it's like, if this contradicts something I've said before. I really don't care.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think the criticism that everybody danced around was that Pope Francis was really bad with public relations because he would spitfire like Ghostface Killer.
Yeah. Yeah.
It would just all come out, and he would sit around media, and it was like he was just thinking and letting all his thoughts pour out. And then if you have like a media that's very eager to like push this idea that the Catholic Church is becoming liberal, they're able to like pick little pieces out of it, and then conservative media is able to say like, look, he's liberal. This guy's like, this is a problem. You should be concerned about this. Whereas like, I think really both views are pretty inaccurate because he said some stuff that like, I can't even say here. He compared like, he called different people atom bombs, and like, and a lot of his ideas were very much in line with the stuff that you see in conservative media. And also like the media on the left were often very disingenuous about what he had said. So like the idea that he supports gay marriage is just inaccurate. He never said that. He said that like priests should be able to bless two men or two women who are in a gay marriage. But that's only because you bless everybody. Yeah. Like, doesn't matter. Doesn't matter if anybody is open to receive a blessing from a priest. So that was sort of disingenuous of them to report on that. And there was a lot of that. So I think you have this reaction to what the media on the left was reporting among the right. They were reacting to that. And it was like, well, your intel isn't right. You're mad and you don't even have the facts right.
That's fascinating because also I would imagine that at least a portion of the stuff he says is either going to be in Italian or Spanish. So you can add an element of translation cost to anything. So you would say that the idea that he was a particularly liberal pope, and look, there were, he was the first Jesuit. Jesuits in general tend to be more politically liberal than some of their cohorts in other parts of that church. Like that would not be looked at as odd if he were more liberal compared to other popes. And I think that probably is something that everybody could agree on. But the idea that he was liberal by the sense of, a modern Western political lens, you find to be inaccurate.
Not even close. Not like, that's a great summary. Because obviously we're coming from Ratzinger to Francis, whereas Pope Benedict was very conservative. So, but one of the other like very big criticisms among the conservative side of things is that like America's having a moment right now in Catholicism. Like the majority of the priests coming in are extremely conservative, very conservative. Whereas like the last group was, sort of rose out of the sexual revolution of the 60s and into the 70s. Yeah. So it had been, for the first part of our lives, Catholicism was kind of thought of as liberal on the the soldier level. But yeah, I don't know. It's tricky. He's definitely, for a pope, he's definitely more liberal, but he was like referred to abortionists as Nazis. Yeah. Like this, you're never going to hear a liberal say that. Like, and he said usually a ton of stuff. Yeah.
Maybe Kanye. But other than that,
well, Kanye's not a liberal.
Well, I don't know where Kanye is these days. We're gonna try to keep this conversation holy and stay away from cousin dialogue right now. But Yeah. So what would you say is the issue from your perspective, an educated perspective in this regard, where he was more liberal than Pope Benedict, his predecessor, who, by the way, didn't die? That's another weird thing. He didn't die, Pope Benedict. He just said, I'm out the Pope game and you're allowed to do that. That was an odd one. Anyway, go ahead. Where was he more liberal than Benny?
Yeah. And I've always admired Benedict for doing that. But yeah, he was more liberal in the sense of, and he was certainly more liberal than the next Pope we're going to get, who's I assume is going to be very conservative. That's my guess. But he was more liberal in the sense that he was very much like, he took the role of apostle instead of like theologian. Whereas like, if you really like got down to it, Francis is just following Catholic theology. I mean, he agrees with all of it, but he was more willing to like get out into the world and have dialogues with anybody. It didn't matter. And, you know, I think one thing that really bothered a lot of people is that the first thing he said is like, I'm your new Pope and I'm a sinner. And it's like, well, I thought that's what you always wanted to hear. Like, we don't think that he's a god. We don't worship him as a god. We think he's a continuation of the apostles. But he was often like, I mean, very much like the Jesuit perspective, like you said, very much like walk around with sandals on, talk to anybody, like anybody and everybody has a chance. Yeah. There isn't like a barrier. There is a literal barrier, but like a metaphysical barrier between the Vatican and the rest of the world. So, you know, he like, I think he had a dinner with, or a big dinner with a bunch of like transgender activists, which really upset, you know, a lot of people in conservatives. But he also like, he kind of did have a problem with the like conservative direction of the church in America. So like, and especially the traditional Latin mass, which Benedict was like a very big advocate for, which is like, that's about as conservative as it gets. Like, that's hardcore. Like one of the priests who does confession at my parish is like a traditional Latin priest. And it's like, I mean, it's a totally different experience. It's intense. Yeah. But so Francis had a problem with that movement inside Catholicism.
And he took a hammer to that. He changed that.
Yeah, I tried to, he like, the narrative was that he was trying to like completely eradicate it as like something that was just a relic of the past. I don't know how accurate that statement is. But he certainly didn't like it. And that sort of like progressive mindset, which is not like, doesn't fit in the left-right paradigm of American politics, but that is sort of a progressive stance.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, like this sucks, let's change it is a progressive idea. Like, this sucks, there's a reason we should remember our forefathers is a conservative idea. And like, that's, I think the reason why Pope Francis fit into this myopic version of a left-right axis in terms of American politics was that things that conservatives were very, very dialed into, which is progressivism is infecting our institutions. Look at schools, look at police, look at the military, look at, right? The Catholic Church would be the like cartoon ultimate goal for that argument. Like, cause now you're saying the Pope is into drag queen story hour. Like there's no hope for the modern conservative. So I think that's where it came from. I can understand why it got the traction that it got. What I don't know from the point of view, because I am not inside Catholic circles, is where people really broke down on it and whether or not people were either looking at Pope Francis's wielding of papal power in a more naturalistic human way where he's a guy with opinions on news stories that are in the time that he is living, or whether or not there is a hunger for the Pope to not be a human, but be a mascot, be this aspirational figure who is demonstrating in a removed way the, ideal of a Catholic. Like what this is not to be, you shouldn't relate to him. You should look to him.
Yeah. One of the priests at my parish, that's another thing. You get to have these really cool, in-depth conversations very often. He was over for dinner and we were chatting, and he said it really well. He said, like, as Catholics, we shouldn't care about politics, but we should care about issues. Mm-hmm. So, and those issues, it shouldn't matter where they fall politically. And like, back to what you were just saying, like, it's the oldest institution in it, like, that still exists,
bar none. Yeah.
Like, so many empires have been born and died in that time. And it was kind of a blink compared to Catholicism. So there's definitely like, there's some major caution you have to take with any sort of changes. But within Catholic theology, the idea is that the church is like the body of Christ. So it'll be okay.
Yeah.
Like the proof of like the fact that God is involved in the church is that humans are clearly not in control of it, because even with all these scandals, 2 millennia of scandals, it's still going. Like humans have like done everything to screw it up, and it still keeps going. And it
is chugging along. All right. R.I.P. Francis, but the Pope is dead. Long live the Pope. What do you give us the scuttlebutt, the Catholic message boards? Who's got the inside track? I haven't seen the betting odds yet on which cardinal's gonna get the bump. I did. We're recording this a little early, so the NFL draft just took place, and apparently this is the first time that the NFL draft has ever taken place in the interregnum between a pope dying and them selecting a new pope. So it gave a whole different meaning when the football team from Arizona had made their pick, but on television it just says Cardinals, the pick is in.
I saw that. No.
But yeah, so here we go. Well, who do you think gets it? And if you don't know a name per se, just the general vibe. You believe that the pendulum is now going to swing back toward somebody who is a more traditionally conservative pope.
Most likely, Cardinal Sarah is the one everybody wants. He would be the first African pope, and I mean, there's like a revolution happening in Asia and Africa right now. Yeah. A Catholic revolution. So I think
the odds on an Asian pope are up.
Yes,
people think that we might have an Asian pope.
Yes. Yeah. I forget their names, but the 2 of the cardinals who are definitely in the running are Asian. Cardinal Sarah's he's very much a defender of the West. And, a lot of very clearly politically conservative ideas. So I think that's where the pendulum's going to go, but we'll see, man. Who knows? There's a good movie. Shoes of the Fisherman is a story that looks at like a Cold War era pope who begins in a Siberian labor camp and slowly kind of works his way up to to a cardinal, and then the pope dies. And so it walks through the whole process of what happens in selecting a new pope. Beautifully shot. It takes place in Rome, obviously. So if anybody's looking for a way to waste 3 hours, it's not a bad way to do it.
Well, you know, that movie Conclave is like just coming out on VOD. And I got to say that the marketing has been a little extreme. I'm going to say you didn't need to go there. Just, I don't know, just some skywriting or something. You didn't need to kill the Pope. Although while we're there, have you gotten to see any of the J.D. Vance memes? J.D. Vance was the last head of state to see the Pope. He visited with J.D., for whom, you know, the Pope has been critical of specifically the Trump administration. And J.D. Vance has been, you know, he is a Catholic, but he has not been shy to joust with the Pope's position. But it was clear that he was very honored to meet him. The Pope then went out and blessed people in St. Peter's Square and then died there. Yeah. Like, apparently he was on the mend and not so much right after that. But yeah, J.D. Vance killed the Pope memes. Have you seen them?
Oh, yeah. So part of my new career journey is that I've been writing for Bridget Fetisi for her podcast, Dumpster Fire. And we have, you know, our meeting is on, we have Monday meeting. So it was like the news was just coming out and so were the memes. The memes were already out. And, you know, we're in the like writers meeting. We're like, well, we got to talk about this.
Yeah.
like those two events are very close. J.D. Vance and like, you know, the Pokemon cards with his oversized head and all that. Or just pop. It's like, I mean, come on, man. We can't ignore this.
Talk about it. You got to talk about it.
Yeah, it's going to be the next week's going to be interesting though.
Yeah, I guess it's like 2 weeks, but they got to fly like, I think it's like 180 cardinals that all come in to Vatican City. They all pack in elbows to a-holes into the
Sistine Chapel.
The Sistine Chapel. Yeah. And get to voting. But man, that's a wild one where like, you mean to bring in that kind of that's like the oldest politics. That's like medieval politics. Like to win that room, to win a conclave. That's got to be nuts.
Oh, that's huge, man. Yeah, it'll be fascinating.
All right, Kevin Ryan, thank you so much for joining us. Where can people find you now?
KevinRyan.us is where I gather all my work. So yeah, my stories are on there. And then we'll talk about Substack and all that later.
You've got a lot of shit coming. It's going to be fun. It's going to be
I'm
really,
excited,
really good.
man.
Kevin, thank you so much for talking Pope with us.
I love it. Good chat, dude.
And that'll wrap it up for us today. Politics, Politics, Politics is written and hosted by me, Justin Robert Young, for Dog and Pony Show Audio in Austin, Texas. If you'd like to send me an email, you can always do so, theyoungamerican@gmail.com. Find the full video version of this program at Politics, Politics, Politics on YouTube. It's just that easy. We love our YouTube people. You can always support us with a one-time donation. PayPal.me/PayJury. Venmo is Justin-Young-20. Cash App is PX3Cash. Send me anything you'd like in the mail. Post Office Box 153184, Austin, Texas 78715. You can always get our bonus content at TakePoliticsSeriously.com. Paying members get 2 bonus episodes each and every week. You know, it's $12 a month, but that's $3 a week, man. If you would buy me 1 cup of coffee each week so I could sit in your car and talk to you about politics twice a week, that's the deal for you. Or do it even cheaper. Buy the whole year at the same time, $99. It's 150 episodes of PX3 for under $100. That's less than $1 an episode. Come on, man. At a certain point, I'm going to be paying you. But of course, our founding group, get your name right at the end of the podcast, like these fine folks. And I got an email from somebody, and I think that they're wise. Because we used to, on the old website, had the Titanic $10 tier. And so I have kind of mixed the two together. I've said the founding Titanic tier. We just got to go alliteration. So how about this? Since we are a political show, how about you become one of our founding fathers? Even if you're a woman, you're a founding father to me because you have gone above and beyond and sent me the kind of money that I need to run this show because you want your name on it. And that's what you get. L3PO, Peepaw, Scott, Middle-Aged Mike, Tom, Sarah Jeannie, Jeremy, Pro Idiot, Chiller Tomatoes, oh yeah, it's Adam, Neil, AB Puppy, Dr. Whiskey, Michael, Fat Tony's PJs from New York, Will, The Borge B, Matthew, Matt, Edwin, Andrew, Sam, Andrew, Phil, Edison, D, really? Devon, Paul, a dog named Truckers, Jerry, Gloria, Trucker, John, Berkeley, Steven, and Zombie Doc, right off the top of the old dome. Go ahead and join their illustrious ranks. On our next free episode, at the end of the week, we are going to be joined by Evan Scrimshaw. We're going to be joined by Ryan Jakubowski, and we will be doing our worst state party draft. Oh, it's an illustrious competition, friends. Oh, we study hard on it all year, and we decide who is the worst at their jobs. Now, we recorded this about a week and a half ago. I got to tell you, there's even worse news. I'm not going to tell you where the Democratic Party in Florida went in this draft. It's high. I'll tell you it's high. But you've had members leave that party over the last 2 days. And they've just said, this is a dead party. Oh, good Lord. All right. That'll wrap it up for us today. Till next time, this is your old pal Justin Robert Young saying, some shows talk about politics, others talk about politics, and still more discuss politics. But this is the only show that dares discuss. Oh, 3.
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.
Dog and Pony Show audio.